You're on.
Good evening. Did you like that? Did you hear Matt just told me I'm on? As you might have realised, everyone, good evening. And we are in a brand new studio tonight. As you can see, this is our whole new crowd setup. So yeah, we're still getting used to it. So you might have to just like bear with us a little bit. Like if Matt's going, guys, you're on camera. It's like, oh yeah, right. That's why, okay, so just bear with us a bit tonight. But it is a very nice new environment we're in, so we hope you like it. We're excited. I'm joined tonight by Dave. Dave, say hi.
Great to see you all.
Tonight is also International Women's Day. Well, it's been International Women's Day all day, so I just wanted to give a shout out to all the women out there that are listening as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, yeah, great species. You're not supposed to laugh at that, Matt.
I don't know what to
agree.
say. They are such a great species.
Follow that.
I'm surrounded by two men here. I was gonna say something more, but I'm just gonna move it along. Yeah. So
Sorry, I
welcome.
just wasn't expecting you to say great species. That's just great gender.
The greater species.
Well, I thought it was a really good quote to say that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
thanks. Anyway, that
No,
whole
you
segment is now ruined, so we'll just move on. So yeah, tonight, welcome to Crowd, and we're just carrying on our series. So Matt's here tonight to chat to us a little bit about the theme of giving and grace, which I'm really looking forward to. So I think, without further ado, as he's stolen my thunder, I'm just going to move over to Matt, and then we'll come back in a bit and do some questions. So myself and Dave will be picking up questions. So if you've got any as Matt's talking, please do send them through, post them on the feed, and we'll endeavour to pick them up.
Fantastic. So let's get into it. We're talking about generosity tonight. It's really cool to be in this little new, well, I say little, it's not exactly tiny, the studio. You creak it, did you drop your phone? No, okay. So it's great to be with you. So grab your Bibles. Now I remember sitting in a church and the offering plate came round and I had no money at the time, zip, nada, no money whatsoever. But I really felt like I wanted to give. So what I did was I took off my watch, which I absolutely loved, by the way. This one's okay. I mean, it's not brilliant, but it's okay. But I added it to the offering plate. I didn't have to. I just, for whatever reason, really wanted to. And I have these sort of times where I'm in this zone of freedom to give, and I do it, sort of gladly and joyfully. But then there are times where I'm not so joyful about giving. And I think most of us know that feeling and that tension, right? And it doesn't have to be in anything big or dramatic either. For instance, my default at the self-service checkouts, when they ask you to give a few extra pennies and to give it for charity, it's just to go, no. And I tell myself, things like I already give, but then there is this niggle in my mind, and sometimes it's guilt and sometimes it's conviction. So what is it then about generosity that does this to us? And why does talking about it cause us to tense up, And to address the elephant in the room early, there are some genuine concerns that the church is just after your money. And I get it. But why single out the church? Everyone, every institution, the corner shop, the government, they all want your money in some shape or form. And of course, the Bible has a lot to say about money. And Pete Farrington did a great job a couple of weeks ago unpacking this idea that money is not a neutral tool and how we should see ourselves as stewards rather than owners of everything that we hold, right? So despite the tension and, the church is just talking about money again, if I'm honest with you, how long have we been doing Crowd now? I don't know, 6 years. This is the first time in 6 years we've really done a few talks on money. So we're okay. So let's have an honest conversation about giving, because honestly, there is a freedom and a joy in generosity that is pretty life transforming. So to unpack it, we will look at why giving can feel like losing. We're going to ask, is generosity actually just about money? And finally, I want to look at this sort of freedom that I found in church that day where I gave my watch and see how we can become people who give with joy and not guilt. So let's start by unpacking this idea and asking the question, why can giving feel like we're losing? And if I'm honest with you, I think the answer lies in the idea that money feels very finite, like it's a scarce resource, that we seem to have less and less of it at the moment, don't we? And once it's gone, once it's spent, it's gone. So giving it away can feel a little bit bizarre. And charities in the UK especially have spotted this downward trend. There are roughly 4 million fewer donors now than 10 years ago, which is a huge section of the population in the UK. And it's not surprising because we've become less generous, because 80% of us now cite finances as one of the key sources of anxiety in life. That's a lot of people. Of course, the irony here is not lost on us, is it? Because often to cope with this anxiety of finance, we do something called self-directed spending. So we say things like, I can't afford the house, but what I can do is buy this latte. So most of us have no problem treating ourselves every week. And another thing for me I don't know if you guys have had it. It's the when I have more, I'll give more thinking, right? It's called the security stockpile, proper posh name for it. And it's the idea that I'll give when I get a pay rise, or for a lot of Christians, I'll give when I win the lottery, which I think is a good one because a lot of Christians use that as an excuse to play the lottery, praying, God, help me to win it, and I'll give the majority of the winnings to charity. I find that incredible, by the way, and I certainly am not promoting that. But it is incredible how we think like that, right? So we have these different ideas, these different things to think about when it comes to money. And I just want to pause there, just want to stop. Have you guys ever had that when I earn more, I'll give more thinking? Or have you just been like straight down the line, give all the time?
Never ever thought that.
Really?
Never.
How come?
I think it should always cost you to give. Yeah, I think it should always cost you to give. And God asks you to give out of what you have, where you are. So it's never been a difficult thing in my thinking.
I think I have had that mentality at points, like particularly when I was younger, like when I was a student, and I didn't necessarily have a regular income, and any income I was living on was borrowed money. It was like my student loan or whatever, or money from parents. So I didn't really I wasn't earning anything as such. I didn't feel necessarily that I needed to tithe out of my income because I didn't really have any income. But arguably I look at it now and I think
what tithe means now.
Like giving 10% of your income, your salaried income, back to God, through the church into ministry and stuff. But I think the principle of giving, I look back at it now and think, well, I kind of used my student loan like it was my own money, so maybe I should have done that. I think at the time it felt like it was justifiable, but I think it sometimes as you grow as a Christian, it's like, well, it's not what I can get away with in rules. I could get away with not paying it because technically I'm not earning it. But actually now I look at it much more as like, what can I give and how can I tithe, but also just give above and beyond that and be generous.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that it's an interesting one, isn't it? And financial security is one of those things that they say that financial security is a horizon, so we never actually reach it. And so this thinking about generosity and giving is a really interesting one. And there's this great analogy, when being tight with money, the good old Yorkshireman, being our fists stay closed. And there's a bit of Victorian folklore that tells us how we can catch monkeys. And we catch them with a hollowed out coconut, and you chain the coconut to a tree, and you make sure that in that coconut there is a hole just big enough for the monkey's hand to slip in, but it's too small for it to come out. When it grabs the peanuts inside the coconut, it puts its hand in, grabs the peanuts, and it can't get its hand out. So the monkey, it becomes trapped by its by these peanuts, right? And so once it's reached in and grabbed as much of it as can, its fist is too big to take out, and it's trapped. But of course, the monkey is not trapped by the coconut, is it? It's trapped by its own refusal to let go of what it's holding. See, a closed fist traps us in many ways, but it's the very act of letting go that sets us free. And the monkey should learn this. So let's go a little bit deeper. Is generosity just about money? Now, in the Bible, we have a few letters Paul wrote to a church in a place called Corinth. And Corinth was a trade city. It's a lot like Liverpool or Chicago, not really the capital, but doing all right for itself and, you know, prospering and having a lot of trade. And Paul is organizing a financial gift from the non-Jewish churches in Corinth, and he's raising money for the Jewish church in Jerusalem, who were facing some serious hardship at the time. Now, the Jewish believers in Jerusalem had sent out the good news, and Paul wanted the non-Jewish believers then to respond by sharing their resources back, which was money. And in Paul's mind, this gift back is a living picture of what he called grace. And it's a word that we see a lot in the Bible, and it's a word that Paul uses a lot when talking about giving. So grace is simply when someone gives you something you didn't earn and you can't repay. Grace is when someone gives you something that you didn't earn and you can't repay. So when we experience God's grace, right, through the work of Christ. He gives us abundant life, and it wasn't something that we earned, and we can never, ever repay that gift. But on a micro level, then, grace might be a complete stranger walking into the restaurant where you're eating, and they pay your bill for no apparent reason, and then get off, so you can't pay them back, right? And so this is a beautiful picture of grace. So Paul shows us this really beautiful cycle of how generosity is about grace and how grace is about generosity. And it's this cycle that goes around. And, you know, over the years, I have done, and maybe you've not done them, but I've definitely done every wrong kind of giving because grace was absent, right? There was a season where I basically tipped God. There you go. Then I went through a phase of every gift felt like a deal, you know. I gave, so where's my blessing? And honestly, there was also a stretch when my church giving was basically a membership fee. And I would only keep giving it if the church sort of met my needs. Because none of this is what Paul is describing when he talks about grace. Instead, what he actually does, he gives an example of the Macedonian church. Now, the Macedonian church was a very different town to Corinth, and it was full of people in extreme poverty. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, Paul says, we want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. So there's that word, grace again, this abundant favor that's been given to the churches in Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty. I mean, that's a juxtaposition right there. Abundance of joy, but extreme poverty has overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. It's a really astounding scripture. So imagine being a Macedonian believer, right? And having to choose between this idea of feeding your children and sending money to strangers in Jerusalem, and choosing to send the money to the strangers in Jerusalem, not because you're reckless, but because you have experienced God's grace, and grace changes how you count. Grace opens a fist because a closed fist cannot receive, right? One of the most beautiful stories in the Bible about giving is where Jesus is sat in front of the offering box in the synagogue. Now, this box that Jesus sat in front of at the synagogue was shaped a little bit like a trumpet. So there was a box, and then out of the top came this sort of trumpet, and it was long and narrow. But it opened at the top and sort of narrowed down, so you couldn't get your hand in to steal the offering, right? But this was made out of metal, okay? So what was interesting here is when you put the coins in, they made this huge noise, right? Like, the change machines you get in the arcade.
Yeah.
And so the more you gave, the more noise it made. So the wealthy givers made a lot of noise and they looked really generous. And so in Luke chapter 21, it says that when Jesus was in the temple, he watched these rich people dropping their gifts in the collection box. And he would have heard it as well. And then along comes a poor widow who dropped in 2 small coins. And Jesus watches. But like I say, he can also hear. I think he would have hardly heard anything from what the widow put in. The rich made a lot of noise and the world knew what they gave. But the poor widow, not a whole lot of noise. And Jesus makes this really incredible statement. He says, right, I tell you the truth. When Jesus ever starts a sentence with, I tell you the truth, I'm always paying attention because he is the truth, right? I mean, why would you start as I'm telling you the truth? So he wants you to get this point, right? And he says, this poor widow has given more than all the rest of them, for they have given a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she has. And that is beautiful in so many ways. And I have to be honest with you, I don't think Jesus whispers this. I think everybody would have heard Jesus say this, because I think for Jesus, giving has never been about the total amount, the sum. I think in God's kingdom, the beautiful thing is 2 small coins can mean more than millions. And I know that sounds like the maths doesn't really add up, but I think Jesus measures something differently from quantity. And that's powerful and liberating, but it's also deeply challenging, right? So heaven's accounting doesn't measure amount. I think it measures sacrifice. And that's Paul put it this way in his letter. Carrying on in 2 Corinthians, a few verses down, he says, each one of us must give as we have decided in our hearts, not reluctantly, that's always a challenge, right? Or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And so I wonder if that widow was cheerful when she gave. I kind of think she was in many ways. Maybe she gave because she had guilt. Maybe it was out of a sense of guilt. Maybe she felt like she had to. But I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me. I somehow doubt it. I kind of think the lady had caught something about God, just like the church in Macedonia had caught something about giving these small amounts. And Jesus notices it because it's wrapped up in grace. So some of you may be thinking, this is great, Matt. What's about the tithe, the thing that Anna mentioned, which I think is a fair question. And just to echo, if you don't know what tithing is, it's where you give a portion of your income, usually to the church. And depending on what your theology is, that will range between 10% and 23%. And I believe that regular proportional giving is important and is a good thing to do. But I didn't want to spend time on that. I wanted to get it right here, because I think you've got to get the grace thing. You've got to get your heart right? Because you can tithe and still have a closed fist, which is why grace, I think, has to be the foundation of your giving and definitely not legalism. Now, I know that many will genuinely struggle with this, and I know that quite a few of people listening to this will be struggling to pay their bills every month. And so hear me clearly, this is not a sermon asking you to give like instead of paying your gas bill or whatever. God knows your situation. But early on in my Christian walk, I had gone a bit crazy with money, thinking God would give me money if I asked rather than waiting on God. I got friendly with my credit card. Oh, yes, sometimes I had to use it just to buy food. But most of the time, I just used it because I wanted to, thinking God will just pay it off because God meets all my needs according to his riches in glory, the Bible tells us. So what happened was my wrong thinking produced a wrong outcome. And I was tens of thousands in debt before I realized. And my wife, who is next to me here on the comments, married me and my debts, right, babe?
That's a great package.
That's a great package. I don't recommend the debt in marriage. But anyway, it was in that place that I knew I had to get a handle on finances, which for me meant understanding not just what I should give, but why. Why should I give? Okay, I wanted to be more like the widow than the Pharisees. And it's not always easy when there are so many other things that we can do with our money, right? So yes, a closed fist cannot receive, but it's also hard to keep that hand open once you've got it open. I don't know if you've ever played that game where you put a coin in your hand, right? And someone has to grab it before you close it, just like that. It can be a bit like that with God, I've found. Yeah, God, I've got an open hand. And you just close it real quick again. But then I am reminded of what else Paul said in Corinthians. He says, for you know, it's one of the most astounding verses in Scripture, you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you, by his poverty, might become rich. And this is the entire engine of all of this. You don't need to give to get blessed, because you are already blessed. You have already been given everything that matters. You were made in the image of God, and God is a generous God. So living generously aligns with who I think we're meant to be. So we don't need to open our hands and then snap them shut again, although we probably will on time and occasion. But we can remember, again, 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8, so many great verses in 2 Corinthians 9:8. God is able to make all grace abound toward you. There's that word again. God is able to make this grace abound towards you, so that you, having all sufficiency in all things at all times, may abound in every good work. That sounds like God wants to get some stuff to us, to give stuff for every good work. Now, God can make this grace abound towards you. I love that phrase. I think that's how much he wants us to be people who are generous. And that's why I put my watch in the offering that day, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And at that point, right at that point, I still remember it really clearly, I was a cheerful giver. And you know what? It was really, really freeing. So maybe like me, I don't know, you need to know that it's okay to open your hand. And if you really want a challenge this week, maybe give something that costs you. But do it because of grace, not because of guilt. Give something that makes your hand open, even slightly. And notice what happens, not just to your bank balance, but to you. If you do the research, you'll find, actually, there are some really good mental health benefits to being a generous person.
Absolutely.
But that's an aside. But give something, right? Give something that costs you. And if it can't be money, find something else. But if it can be money, give that. Everything God has for you, every grace, every joy, every bit of freedom is awesome. And grace frees you from money's grip. And it flows through an open hand, okay? Because a clenched fist cannot hold what God is offering. It's this really interesting paradox. So imagine giving and feeling joy instead of loss. Imagine being the kind of person who holds everything loosely. I do. Not because I don't care, not because I'm reckless, but because I've received something that's made me rich already. I'm not talking about my bank balance. I'm just rich in grace. And I think that's available, not through willpower, but just understanding what you have been given through Christ. Lord, I just pray that you help us all open our hands more to you this week. Amen.
Amen.
Man. Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. That was great. Lots of content in there that I'm sure we're keen to discuss. Yeah, Dave, any thoughts from you?
It's one of my favourite topics, not because it's about money. I think because it's about generosity. And for me, it's about the condition of our hearts. You know, whether we have much or whether we have little, it's our heart in in what we do with that. And we want, for me, I believe the Bible talks about that we're generous and we're only stewards. I think Matt mentioned, or whatever we have, we're only stewards of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wondered if anyone had got any practical examples of like when you've given and kind of the impact that had on you. Because when at the end there, Matt, when you were talking about kind of giving, how giving, like when you've got closed hand, giving like opens your hand, and it sort of, it almost does more to us and our hearts, doesn't it, than it actually does to our finances.
Yeah.
Like I had one example when I was in our church, sort of did a gap year. I used to do a gap year, and so that was a year where I kind of gave 9 months up to kind of work for the church, and I wasn't earning any income at the time, and so I was kind of what Christians call living by faith, which basically means like earning a bit of money before and after, and kind of praying lots and hoping for the best, really, and doing bits of work here and there in between. But yeah, during that season, like obviously money was particularly tight in that season because I wasn't working. And I think it's really hard sometimes to learn about generosity when you're really skint. Yeah. Like it's a lot harder. I find it easy to give now, relatively easy, because I know I've got enough. I've got enough to give. Yeah. But in that season of life, I really didn't have anything to give. So, but I remember like the fear of not having enough had quite a hold on me. And I went to church one day and somebody prayed with me and they said, and it wasn't about money, but they said, I just feel like you need to give. Yeah. Like, and it wasn't even, I don't think it was even praying about money. It was something else. But she said, I just feel like you should go away and test this, but feel like God wants you to give some money away. Yeah. And I was like, I've got like 160 quid in my bank account. That's it. To like live on, to pay my rent, to pay my food bills, whatever. This was 20 years ago, so it would have gone a bit further than it does now, but still not a lot of money, really. And I sat with it and I thought, no, fear of money's got a real grip on me, so I'm just going to have a go. Like, I'm not good in this area of my life. And so I gave like something like a whole chunk of it, like 100 quid of that away to another person that I knew needed some money, who happened to be on my team as well. I did it, kind of anonymously. They didn't know it's from me. I just left them the cash. And I just thought, if nothing else, it would break the fear of money on my life. And I prayed about it and I did it. God sort of dropped somebody in my mind to give it to. So I did that. And the next day I got up and there was like basically like money through my door. Wow. And it was the exact amount that I'd given away. Wow. And I just thought, in a way I was like, well, what was the point of that, God? I've just like, that money's just gone in circles. But I felt like it really, it did do something. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about having more or less. It was about breaking that hold of fear of money on my life. And like, powerful. I was just like, well, you can't give God whatever you give. He'll give, he can give back to you. But just that it wasn't about the money. It was about changing my heart and that fear and the grip that money can have when you hold on to it tight. So I really resonated with that and it just reminded me. But has anyone else got any good examples of...
I mean, I think that's a great story. And it's actually tied in with what you were saying before, about not, like not tithing, not giving, whatever. But you did what you did out of obedience. And whenever we do anything out of obedience, again, that word cost comes in. But, as a student, I think sometimes we think it's always about money. And quite often, obviously, money's involved. But and when you were on the year team, you gave what you had. What do we have? We have our time. Once you spend that, you don't get that back. Yeah. That's the most valuable thing we have when we give that. Yeah. You served. There's so many, you engage with different things that were going on. And all those things cost us. So whilst money, we quite often make it to be the main thing, it's all those other things, but it's the obedience. So I think it's a great testimony, as we like to say, is that when we step out in obedience, and I'm sure you were blessed that, some money came in, but I'm sure that you would have still been blessed if it hadn't, because you never left with a void when we're obedient. No. There's just something so amazing about that.
And actually, the blessing isn't, in that situation, it wasn't about the money or the amount, although it kind of taught me that God had it covered. But it wasn't even about that. It was about the blessing was in learning that money didn't need to have a hold on me. It already was a blessing, wasn't it? Yeah. So it's interesting. I really like the question that Matt raised earlier, though. Like, is generosity just about money?
Yeah.
Because I think you're right, Dave. It isn't. It's about your time. It's about hospitality. How generous you are with your things.
Yeah.
I think we should be generous with money because
Yeah.
money can have a real hold on us. But
Absolutely.
we can be generous in
Yeah.
so many other ways as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's Peter and John, isn't there, when they go into the temple and they see the guy who's begging. The guy who's begging doesn't even look at them. He's in the best place. He just puts his hand out asking for a gift. But they look at him. They look at him. They say, silver and gold have I none. You know, but what I do have, we give. So in that case, you know, for me, it's about getting down and connecting with people. There's a guy I see a lot at Tesco. That's my little mission field. And he's there begging, and he's got a drug history. And his name's Pete, and I've been on a journey with him for the last few years, you know, talking with him. And he's always amazed that I say, coronation chicken and a latte. Now, that a few years ago, he couldn't have that. And he goes, why do you bother remembering my name? You know, and I'm like, well, I want to. And I think, you know, God does, when these things don't have control over us, God does something. So for me, it's about time. I keep saying to him, let me take you for a coffee. And he's like, oh, you don't want to do that? You know, I'm a bit, I'm like, yeah, I do. You know, I haven't taken for a coffee. I've took coffee and sandwiches to him. And my goal is actually to get him to come with me. Because time is really important. And he needs to know that he's valued. As we are generous with our time, that means going a little bit earlier somewhere. So you've got time to do these things.
Yeah. Elise has put in the comments, the time is what I have most trouble giving when it comes to my sense of comfort. Because I'm an introvert, and after giving a lot of myself, I feel depleted. Which is not good for a creative. But it's very true. And I love this lesson. You know, your time, your treasure, your talent, all your tongue. All of these things are really important things to learn to be generous with, isn't it? It's not just, I think a lot of Christians, what tends to happen is, and Dave, maybe you've seen this more than I have, but you go to church, you know, I joined when I was 18, didn't really have any money. It was exciting, you know, and you're learning this whole thing about living by faith, and God's doing some really great stuff. Then you get a job, and you go through this shift of seeing your employer as your provider rather than God, right? I mean, I felt really challenged, but I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. But you tithe, you give your 10%, and occasionally you'll give to the, you know, a special offering or a missionary or something that comes through. But it's like we've lost that element of faith. Do you know what I mean? Because we've got comfortable a little bit with it. And so then, you know, we can look at other areas like hospitality, like time, like generosity in those areas. But I think it's easy to become comfortable, and we operate within our boundaries. What always one of the things that came out when I was doing research on the talk was that the poorest continent on the world, Africa, gives proportionately over pretty much double what we give in Europe, right? So as a percentage of its income, Africa is twice as generous as Europe, where we're, you know, super wealthy and got everything. And there's something about a lot of people's stories about giving and God doing something is when they didn't have something to give. Do you see what I mean?
Totally.
And you don't, I think it's a shame in many ways. We don't hear many stories of people who are comfortable in life because, I don't know, I just wonder if we've lost the faith is the wrong word, but maybe the belief that, or the willing to risk, or the wanting the adventure. Do you see what I mean?
Well, we live in a world, don't we, where we're all individuals and we all like our own space. And I don't want to invade your space, and you know, I don't want to put you under pressure. You know, I'm sure, you know, and so we almost get to a place where we don't need each other, and we're certainly not going to say, "Can I give you this?" Or can I do that? Because it's like we're intruding. And I think that's what we need. We need to lose some of that, where we actually dare to say, look, can I just do that? I don't want anything off you. You know, because when you do give things to people, it's almost, well, what do you want from me? Absolutely nothing. Just want to say, you're precious. I love you. At this stage, you're precious to God. Here you go.
Yeah.
And that may lead, to other things. But did you say it was Lisa who sent that first comment? Alicia, I would encourage you. It does cost us. With our time, and do it joyfully. And you said that you feel depleted. Maybe that's part of the cost that you pay. But, God always, 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 always honours our obedience. So I'd encourage you to have a go and let us know how you get on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? It's like, God, where can I give? Where can I be generous? That may be money, that may be time. It tends to be in an area where I find God challenges you in areas where you probably don't have, like I said, as much. And so it's harder to give. But yeah, I think that, God, where can I sow? Where can I give? That adventure, that it's, I mentioned it before, but neuroscientists have finally caught up with God or caught up with the Apostle Paul. When you spend money on yourself, retail therapy, the happiness fades. It doesn't last very long. Some of you may know this from your own experiences, but it doesn't last very long, and the happiness does fade. But when you give and you're generous, that happiness remains.
Yeah.
Which is quite an extraordinary thing, isn't it? I'm feeling down, therefore I should go and give. It's not. It doesn't just roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
But there's just something deeply powerful about going, I just need to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a heart thing more than a proportionality thing, isn't it? Like I like the going back to the widow you talked about, and I was just thinking about that example you gave of Africa as a continent proportionally give more than we do in the rich West. And yeah, you just sort of think it reminded me again of that story you told about the widow, Matt, that like it's not about the proportionality of our giving, it's about the heart behind our giving. And God's always after our heart, isn't he? He's after, he doesn't need our money, like he doesn't need our giving. God has all the resources in the world, right? He needs us to give for what it does to us, not for him. Like, so it is about that kind of proportionality. And if something's costly for you to give, then that's probably the thing you should be giving, I guess. Yeah. Whether that's money, which does have a grip on a lot of us, but it may well be something else like your time or whatever.
Well, that ties in beautifully with Ellis's question here. Should we give a proportionately flat fee or should we give a higher percentage if we earn more?
It really doesn't matter. I mean, I think that's a question lots of people in church have asked me over the years, and I would just say, I have never given that more than a second thought, purely because you give what is on your heart to give and give it joyfully. People say, do I give, before tax or do I give after tax? Tithing is a starting point. It's a principle that they used in the Old Testament. You give what God has laid on your heart. And I always think a tithe's a great place to start, but generosity never thinks about volume. It never thinks, I'll give, £200 this month or whatever. It just gives. And, in church, people give regularly towards the work, towards the support of the church, because obviously you have to keep the lights on, etc. But it's beyond that. And I would just encourage you, don't overthink it. Just go. Just say, God, touch my heart. And I know for Julie and I remember very quickly when we first got married, being in a meeting, and a little bit like Matt with the watch, and Julie said to me, I was nursing, and we didn't get a whole lot of money then. I think Julie, we just had our first baby, I think. Can't remember. And I remember Julie saying, I think we need just to empty our bank account. And I'm thinking, well, that's not going to be hard. But what I did know that we'd only been paid maybe 1 week before. We were going to have like 3 weeks where we had nothing. And I'm like, well, have you really thought about the Euro the finance? Have you really thought this through? God's man of faith and power. No. But it was something that Julie really thought we should do. So we did it. And I remember I was saying, look, I'm not going to say anything to anybody. I think we'll have to live on the credit card again. And You know what? It was quite amazing because God was speaking to people that evening. And I remember arriving home, I think it was Monday evening from my shift, and there was food. There was like a bag of food on the doorstep. And that happened numerous times during this time. And I can't remember us ever telling anybody about it, you know, but when God knows about it, he makes a way.
Yeah, he does.
You know, and it really is about just trust him. And you know what? If he hadn't, I think we would have survived going a
You'd have
while
made
without.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there are stories where people will say, "Oh, we gave away a car, and then God gave us a brand new car." Right? Or we gave away a house and God gave us a house. So you sit there and you listen to that and go, well, I want a new house.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give my house away and God's going to give me a house. And you end up homeless.
Yeah.
Right? It's a really interesting thing, isn't it? But at the same time, I think if you sow pineapple seeds, guess what you grow? Right? And I would venture to say if there's an area in life that you want to grow in, that you want to develop in, that you feel like God's challenging you in, start giving into that area.
Yeah.
And start sowing seeds into that
Yeah.
area. If you do that, you'll be amazed at what starts to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And just, you know, you cast your bread on many waters, don't you? And I think it's really interesting when you do that, God starts to prove himself in that situation. And
But
so,
at the same time, you shouldn't give with like that kind of intention in mind. Like, you know, like that idea of giving, so you get a new house, a bigger house, or a better this or better that. Like if I bless someone else, God will bless me back, so I'm going to do it. Like, to me, it's again what you're saying there is it's about the heart state, because like if you can't you can't do something expecting to get something back, because that's the wrong motive to give with. So you can do it, but it's probably not a good idea.
No,
It's
but if
like
you-
the heart thing, isn't it?
it is, but if you give, God's going to give back. Now, he's your time frame and your expectations are probably going to be
Yeah,
questioned.
and there's
right?
no formula to it,
There's
right? Like
definitely
you
no
can't
formula.
tell God
Yeah,
what
yeah.
to give you.
It's
So-
all about the heart, isn't it? You know, so they can have two different people. I agree with totally, Anne. That I remember many years ago, frontline, a guy coming in, he was saying, I prayed for a car and God gave me this brand new car. And then I saw this car go past and he said, you know what, I went and I gave my car away and I got that car. And I'm thinking, well, what's your idol?
Yeah.
Yes, it may sound judgmental to you, but, you know, this story just went on and it happened with houses. And I'm just like, you know what, we in the real world, we need to know what it is to be at peace with God, with much, and with plenty. And I think, you know, it is all about the heart. God knows our heart. You know, we think we'll be happier, we'll be more fulfilled with a bigger car or a better house or blah, blah, blah. Where does that stop? Because we know in
Well,
the
it doesn't,
world,
does it?
it happens.
Yeah.
It then becomes, let's exchange the wife.
Yeah.
You know, that's the sad reality of it.
Yeah.
Everything becomes temporary.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think
And it's a real shame.
it does start with one, and I think that I generally think there is a progression. But I think that is a good point. If you have something on your heart, it is good to sow into that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You know,
It is. Like
but
if you're
the heart thing is
Definitely.
key.
It is key because Paul says, I've learned what it is to, like you
That's
said, I've
it.
learned what it is
Absolutely.
to have plenty, and I've learned
Yeah.
what it is to be in need. But in
Yeah.
every situation, I've learned to be content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The word content just means independent of circumstance, which
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah.
Right. Paul's like, I don't care whether I'm rich or poor.
Yeah.
I've just got God's grace. But I tell you, one of the magical, going back to you know, saying breaking fear, I think
Yeah.
if there's a fear, you break it by giving. If there's an idol, you break it by giving.
Yeah.
You can't give your God away.
Yeah.
Right. If money is your God, you can't give it away.
Yeah.
So how do you know money is not your God? Well, you can give it away. Right.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling, you know, and you kind of with housing, you're like, God, I need some breakthrough here. I would genuinely be going, right, where can I give? Not give away your your deposits and all that sort of. You've got to do what God tells you to do.
Yeah.
Just inviting people around, just being
Absolutely.
hospitable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just bring people
Yeah.
in
And it,
in that area.
and it applies in every area of life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It suddenly strikes me, because as
Yeah.
much as you can give a small amount, like the widow, when you only have a small amount proportionally, and that like matters to God.
Yeah.
Equally, when you've got like, I used to have people around when I had a flat share with
Yeah.
other mates, and I didn't even own my own property.
Yeah.
And now I still like to have people
Yes.
around our
Yeah,
dining
yeah.
room table. Now we're in my own family house. But you don't start when you get the bigger
Yes.
house, when you get the perfect house. Just start where you are,
Yeah.
even if it's just like
Yes.
a shared sofa and a couple
Yeah.
of like dial out
Yeah.
pizzas, you know?
Yeah.
Like you don't, you start with where you're at
You
and
do.
use
And
what
it's-
you've got.
And you'll notice everything that God tells us to do, to be hospitable,
Yeah.
to pray for somebody,
Absolutely.
to listen,
Yeah.
to grieve with those who are grieving, to rejoice with those who rejoice. And guess
Yeah.
what? All that requires
Yeah.
you to give
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
The whole thing, for God so loved the world that He gave. The
Yeah.
whole gospel is
Yeah.
built
Yeah.
on God's generosity,
Yeah.
right?
And I think, you just said there, and something that is a value that we all have in common about, hospitality, sharing our homes, I mean, that's something that over the decades we've done freely, like Sundays, Sunday lunches to,
Yeah.
I can't think of how many hundreds and hundreds,
Yeah.
opening up our homes for people to come and live with us, just sharing what we have, and it's holding it lightly.
Yeah.
It's not that they're not precious. We hold them lightly because we are all received from those things ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether we have just people around on a Sunday or whether we're having people come and share our homes with us.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think about how many
I
people.
mean, I think you and Julie, but also you and Sharon as well, Matt. Like you're both you're both people I think of who are great at having people around, having people live with you. Like that is a real lifestyle choice. It's not easy for everyone to give up their own personal family space and do that.
Another natural
Amazing.
one for me because I'm
Yeah.
quite selfish, and we did it when we had a small house and we got a larger house. But I would say it's a value that we really love, and every now and then we meet people saying, "Oh, we really loved it when we lived with you," and I'm like, "Did you? Where was I?" And
Did your face know?
yeah, I remember John McCowan and
Dave was out most of the time.
and Tony Rico, and they're saying we live with you. I'm like, "Did you? Don't me remember any men living in our house." But
Funny.
you hold what you have, and but what I love seeing is that value that we have. Lots of people, even though you share it, you use what you have, and I understand not everybody can have, people live with them, and we did it out of obedience. I, just did it out of obedience because it wasn't a natural thing initially, but we just loved, and it's just great to do.
Yeah. It is. Can highly recommend.
One more question that I just had was, because Matt, you talked a little bit in your talk about kind of when you got into some debt on cards and went into marriage with debt. Like, what do you think about giving and tithing, I guess, but above and beyond tithing as well, while you're in debt and you basically owe other people money, or like you touched on it briefly, but like what would you recommend people do in that scenario?
I think debt's a really interesting one. Having been in it and having done debt counselling with people over the years, I would say that for me, when I was in debt, and this is for me and what we did, I doubled down on my giving. I made sure I paid the debt every month.
Yep.
And I doubled down on my giving. And what that meant was I couldn't buy the things that I wanted to buy, right? In essence, there had to be some change. But I think in that scenario, I refused to let debt and the fear of debt rule me, and the anxiety of it. So I'm like, no, I'm going to make sure that I give, even if I have to work another job, even if I have to do this, that, and the other, or sell stuff. And trust me, I had plenty of nonsense that I bought on the credit card that I could sell. But we also, we worked hard to get out of the debt, and we made some choices. And it's not like getting out of debt happens in a month.
No.
It can take years, right? And so now I'm super grateful. We sit here and I don't have any debt other than the mortgage on my house, but we own the car, we save for cars, we buy cars cash, we don't lease them. And I know people do, and it's not a judgmental thing. For me, I wanted to get out of the debt. I think it's good to get out of the debt, but you have to make those lifestyle choices early, right?
I think as well, what's helpful, Matt, you said how you've done some debt counselling. We've done quite a bit of that over the years, and I've seen just God do some amazing things, because we were never able to say, here's the money, cover your debt and pay us, but we just never had it to do that. But walking through it with people, we would always say, we'd talk about the debt, what you want to do, and some of them would say, we can pay this, blah, blah, blah. But one of the key things we have to do is help people deconstruct their idea of money, because there's all this input like buy now, pay later type of thing. And that has devastating impact on marriages. The numbers of marriages that break down because of that is huge. So we have to deconstruct the idea of money, how we use it. And but I think, when we are helping people walk through that, I think in that they get some healing, they get some input about what money is and how they should use it.
It was really interesting when we were doing the debt counselling that you have to, because like you, it's like you see people and you go, well, I can't give you the money to pay your debts off. But if I could, I probably wouldn't.
That's right.
Right?
That's
and,
right.
and it's a really interesting
That's
thing. There was,
right,
there was this really odd phenomenon that I noticed. They called it the debt consolidation loan. I don't know if they still do. But this was the idea whereby you'd run up, 4 or 5 different credit cards. And let's say you owed 40 grand across all your credit cards. So you consolidated that debt into one payment every month. And that payment would have been lower than the debt payments on all the credit cards. And so you go, this makes financial sense because it's going to free up money every month. We're not going to go from hand to mouth. And so you consolidate your debts and you start to pay. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed when people consolidated their debts within 12 months, 18 months, they were not in £40,000 worth of debt. They were in £80,000 worth of debt because they'd not dealt with the financial habits that got them into debt in the first place. Now, it's not, hear me, I'm not saying everyone in debt is their own stupid fault. I'm not saying that at all. But quite often there are habits, I definitely had them, that got me into debt. And if you don't deal with that, the white knight in shining armor, so classic one recently, someone had a lot of debt, you get redundancy, you get a big redundancy payout, you pay those debts off, thinking, well, I'm debt free. 2 months later, how's the debts? Wow, they're still low, aren't they? And they're creeping up again. Yeah. And so, I think that's a really interesting one. And having to deal with those reasons you're in debt is really important. So Elisa said, let's just look at the comments here. Lady Birkby, giving and blessing aren't necessarily like for like. For example, financial giving doesn't necessarily mean you'll be blessed financially.
That's right.
God knows what we need and blesses accordingly. I think everyone is agreeing there. Alicia says, I want to reiterate that God has always been faithful in restoring me after I've been depleted energetically or financially.
Well done.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's often just a matter of me practicing patience in the interim.
Yeah.
I would totally agree. I think it's like you said, isn't it? You can't outgive God. God is no man's debtor, and it's like, and it doesn't mean that if you give money, you'll get money, like Sonia said. But I think just the life of being generous is really, really good fun, isn't it? And be the first person to pay for dinner. Do you know what I mean? And do
it's
those
so
kind
freeing,
of things.
and it also means that God knows your needs. I always think of that passage in Matthew where he talks about look at the birds and the flowers in the fields. God provides for all of nature. Doesn't he also know your needs and won't he provide for you? And I always think we make it so complicated sometimes, don't we? But it's so freeing when we live generously and God knows our needs. So don't worry about it.
There's can I tell the story about our future in-laws? I'm going to tell it anyway.
It sounds like you just started. So
I just went to my wife for permission, and I'm just like, I'm going to tell it anyway. So my eldest son in 8 weeks is getting married. Is it less than 8 weeks? Anyway, he's getting married soon. And
don't worry, Sharon knows the date.
I'll be there. I'll be there, son. Don't panic. And we, so he's marrying Abby, who's beautiful. Abby's from Indonesia, and her parents were over. So we met her parents, and we went out to eat. Now, normally when we go out to eat, I will sneak off at some point unpay the food bill, right? It's just one of the things in my head. I'm just trying to be generous. I try and pay for the food. But they got there before us, didn't they?
Wow.
They were like, I went to pay the bill and I already paid it. I'm like,
Wow.
what did they pay when we came in?
Yeah.
Did they call you 20 minutes before we arrived and said, here's my... How did they do that so quick? And it got to the point where I just love being around people like that, where you're arguing about who's going to pay the bill. So much better. And so we're like, all right, Shenny, I'm going to tie you to the table. I need to pay for this, right? So it's just really, and they're like, no, we'll get it. I'm like, I'm going to break your legs. It's just the way it's going to be. So I'm not really going to do that. But it's that competition to be generous. I love being around people like that, rather than the people when the check comes at dinner and they're all like,
Who had what?
Yeah.
50-50 split,
That's annoying.
And I don't mind. I get that people want to pay that, but even if it's just like, if I leave it long enough, maybe you'll pay. That kind of thing. So yeah. Anyway, it's probably time for us to
we need to
quit
wrap up.
yapping.
I don't actually know what's happening next week because I forgot to ask
I've not
before we
told
went
you.
on air. But Matt didn't tell us. So tell us what's happening next week, Matt. Just for anyone who wants to know.
We have Will Sotwith with us next week.
Talking about
God's heart for the poor. So we're carrying on, God's heart for the rich and poor, actually. So we're carrying on a conversation about money. This is money part 4. So part 1 was Pete Frankton talking about stewardship. Part 2, Mike Harris last week talked about work and earning money, which was brilliant. This week I talked about grace and generosity. Next week is Will talking about God's heart for the rich and poor. And week 5 is you.
Is it?
It is. It's all about building a legacy. So did you know that?
No.
better start writing that too, Dave.
I'm ready though.
I'm glad we've had this conversation now.
Fine tuning.
So we need to see why you're not getting emails. Anyway, that's what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got Easter. We've got Aid sharing with us, and then you're talking, aren't you, Dan?
Cool.
Resurrection Sunday. And then we're getting into, you didn't ask this, and I've just started off on one now.
I know. And
after that, we've got a 30-week series, potentially, on Jesus a Revolutionary, which I'm really looking forward to.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're just looking at all the stories of Jesus and how they're so countercultural.
Yeah.
Both then and now, which I'm really looking forward to. So anyway, that's what's happening next week.
Awesome. Sounds good. Fab. Well, we look forward to having everyone back next week. And just a reminder as well that if people want to stick around, then you can come and join us in the live lounge afterwards. So we'll just be around, a couple of us, if you want to chat, discuss your questions, get to know us a bit more one-to-one. There'll be a link somewhere in the chat.
Is that right, Zoe?
It's in there. It's in
I'm
there,
looking at Zoe,
apparently.
you're doing the comments.
Brilliant. But
Zoe's looking at me like, I don't know.
all right, we're all under control. It's there.
It's okay, Zoe. Just cold sweats.
And next week we'll know a bit more what we're doing in this room and
We will.
format, so it'll be slicker.
Yeah.
Slicker.
That's the way.
That's what crowd's known
I'm
for.
not saying slick. I'm just saying slightly slicker.
That's really what we're known for. We are like so slick in it. But yeah, no. It'd be good to see you in Live Lounge though. So that link's in the comments, right? It's going to be a bit low key this week, but we're going to get Live Lounge better as the tech gets a bit more established in our really slick studio. Mm-hmm. I love that. We're going to get slicker.
Yeah.
That should be a t-shirt slogan.
Well, we've got to get going much more the other direction, can't we? Anyway, there we are. I think that's a wrap, isn't it? Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you guys. I love it. I'll be in 2 weeks, apparently.
Yeah, you'll be back in a couple of weeks, so we'll see you again soon. And Matt, we just see you every week. So.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you soon.